Imagine an alien being known as the most unbeatable of its species, with centuries of experience and intergalactic battles in its record. Now, imagine this being watching, in total astonishment, as a mere human, a creature many consider fragile and unfit for a battlefield, does the impossible. It expected to witness a normal warm-up, a simple physical preparation. What it saw was a lesson that would forever change its perspective on endurance, strength, and survival. In this epic science fiction tale, a master alien combatant, accustomed to leading elite armies, learns that there is a force even more terrifying than raw power, the human ability to rebuild, adapt, and above all overcome. The story you are about to read is not just about military training, but about a cultural shock of galactic proportions. An alien warrior must come to terms with the fact that true power does not come from brute strength or natural abilities, but from the incredible resilience of humans. And it all begins with a simple yet challenging warm-up from a Deathworlder. Zix THX was not just a master of combat. He was a living symbol of brutality, efficiency, and wisdom, which had made him a legend across the vastness of the Galactic Federation. He was not just a centurion, but a warrior who had fought countless battles and forged an undefeated career in the most renowned combat academies in the galaxy. His 6 pupils, endowed with enhanced vision, could scan even the slightest movement on a battlefield. His gaze could observe hundreds of alien recruits in a single sweep, deciphering them as if they were pieces on a chessboard where he already knew all the possible moves. These cadets, each from a unique origin, crystalline pions, ethereal nebulons, fierce draconids, fluid morphians, were all products of incredible evolution, but none of them knew what they were about to face. None, except one. Among the recruits advancing through the entry corridor, one name stood out as an almost ironic anomaly: Lieutenant Maya Chen. She was human, and most cadets knew that humans did not belong in programs like this. Earth was not a Class 12 world like those dominated by the older and more powerful species. In fact, humans were considered weak, little more than resource merchants for the more developed civilizations of the galaxy. However, this woman had been admitted through a favor, or perhaps a provocation, by Admiral K. Thorne, a name that, to Zix, sounded more like a threat than a blessing. Thorne never broke the rules, but he believed that perhaps it was time to challenge the very concept of fragility. Zix did not know what to expect from Maya Chen, but one thing was certain. If Admiral K. Thorne was involved, something deeper was at play. Zix, the embodiment of battlefield authority, would not tolerate any sign of weakness. Each recruit was a promise of an unparalleled military force that could shape the future of the Federation. However, Maya Chen, the only human, in a sea of aliens, would she be the exception or the failure? Would she be the factor that forced them to rethink the nature of combat and evolution? Zix knew something monumental was coming, and he was not sure if he was prepared for the true nature of this challenge. The legend of Zix THX, fueled by decades of triumphs, was now being questioned not because of his skills, but because of the mere presence of a human. He could not let this pass without provocation, without testing his own beliefs. Military training at the Combat Academy was not just about strength or endurance. It was about psychological destruction, where mind and body became a finely tuned weapon. And now, a human was about to step onto this battlefield. How could she possibly survive? Zix didn't know, but his cold eyes were locked onto Maya, waiting for an answer that he knew would be more than just a simple test. It would be a revolution. Zix THX's name echoed across the galaxy. His victories were a symphony of pain, discipline, and unbeatable endurance. His recruits, under his guidance, had become the elite troops of the Galactic Federation. They were trained in advanced tactical combat, in simulations that pushed both human and alien bodies beyond their limits. Push-ups, burpees, pull-ups, nothing was too much. No challenge seemed insurmountable for those who endured the Combat Academy. Yet now, the battlefield was about to change. Maya Chen, with her seemingly fragile appearance, was an unpredictable factor that could transform the very essence of this training. She was not here to follow the rules. She was here to challenge the very foundations of what Zix considered possible. Zix watched with a calmness that only a combat master could possess. But deep in his mind, something stirred. He didn't know what to expect from this human, but he felt a growing unease, something he rarely experienced. The threat was there, unmistakable, not in Maya Chen's physicality, but in her unshakable confidence. He could feel the challenge in the air. She was no mere recruit. She was a testing ground for humanity itself. She was a living question, challenging everything Zix had believed about resilience and evolution. Suddenly, Zix understood. There was no avoiding the confrontation. He would have to face the legend of Zix THX and the strength of a human who seemed to defy all laws of physics, biology, and nature itself. And that was how the legend of Maya Chen began. She wasn't there to prove anything to anyone. She was there to challenge the very idea of strength. When Zix THX stepped into the grand training arena of the Combat Academy, he moved with the precision of a galactic predator. Each step echoed like the sound of a death sentence for any unprepared recruit. The arena was a vast field of challenges, designed to test the limits of any warrior, but Zix knew that nothing there would be enough to break him. His ceremonial uniform swayed dramatically, not just an aesthetic choice, but a strategic one, a reminder of his unquestionable authority. He knew all eyes were on him, and that in that moment, the power of the Federation was embodied in his presence. The cadets were just shadows in his vision, but there was something there he could not ignore. A human Maya Chen stood among them. She was quiet, at the end of the line, which to Zix was a deliberate choice. Zix scanned the row, analyzing each cadet, each one possessing impressive potential. The Pions, with their crystalline bodies, seemed almost impervious to pain. The Nebulons, with their ethereal fluidity, could adapt quickly to any environment. The Draconids, with their warrior nature, could survive any physical combat scenario. And the Morphians, known for their shape-shifting abilities, possessed an unpredictability that made them formidable opponents. But among them all, Maya Chen stood out. She was human, and to Zix that was both a curiosity and a threat. Her presence could not be ignored. He felt the unease of a leader confronted with the unpredictable. "Welcome," Zix began, his commanding voice resonating through the arena, silencing every recruit. "You have been chosen for the advanced tactical combat integration because someone, somewhere, believes you have the potential to become part of the Federation's elite. However, this program is not for everyone. Some of you will learn that the hard way." His gaze locked onto Maya Chen, and a nearly palpable tension filled the air. He didn't care about the origins of the other cadets, but he knew that she, the human, needed to be tested in a special way. "For some of you, that belief may be mistaken," he said, his voice deep and unwavering. The cadets exchanged glances, a murmur of apprehension rippling through them. To Zix, that sound was music. Fear, when properly managed, was the fuel of discipline. He knew that an elite recruitment program wasn't built with kind words, but with the strength of challenge. The training would be brutal. It was expected that some would quit, and he knew that many would fail. He had seen powerful warriors, those who believed physical strength was everything, crumble under the pressure of his brutality. The dropout rate was 60%, and he loved it. There was no room for weakness in the Federation. But Maya Chen, for some reason, did not seem uneasy. She simply observed him, an almost imperceptible smile on her face. The tension grew when one of the cadets, a peon with sharp geometric forms, raised a hand. He looked at Zix with genuine curiosity. "Combat Master," he began in a soft voice, "I don't understand. Humans come from a Class 12 world. Wouldn't their aggressiveness make them too unstable for this program?" The room fell silent. Zix, who was rarely questioned like this, slowly turned to face the peon. He knew the question wasn't just about human fragility. It was about the perception of a species that had never been considered a real threat. He needed to handle this carefully. Maya, however, didn't hesitate. She tilted her head slightly, a subtle, confident smile spreading across her face. "We're not dangerous because of our aggressiveness," she responded calmly, her voice carrying a surprising firmness for someone so young. "We're dangerous despite our fragility." The room remained silent as the cadets processed the weight of her words. Zix, however, saw something in Maya's eyes that he recognized. It was the same confidence he saw in his best soldiers, but of a different nature. She was not like the others. She didn't need the brute strength of her enemies to prove her power. She had something more. "Interesting," Zix murmured, but nothing else was said. What more could he say? Deep down, he knew Maya was right. Humanity, in its fragility, had a resilience that Zix himself had never given due credit. She might not have the physical strength of a draconid or the endurance of a payan, but her mind and spirit were unyielding. And that was something that, in his experience, Zix knew to be far more dangerous. The arena was about to turn into both a physical and psychological battlefield, where humanity and its limits would be tested in ways Zix had never foreseen. But this, he knew, was only the beginning. He stepped to the side of the arena, making space for what was to come. For the first time, he felt something truly challenge his own definition of strength. It wasn't just physical ability that mattered. He was beginning to realize that, for Maya Chen, true human strength was something far more subtle, more complex, and more threatening. Something that could change the Federation forever. He watched silently as the cadets awaited what was coming. The room was quieter than usual. When Maya Chen began to speak, her voice cut through the tension like a sharp blade. She looked at the cadets, her eyes scanning each one with the confidence of someone who had already faced the worst horrors the galaxy had to offer. "No natural armor," she said calmly, her voice filled with a truth that was hard to digest. "No redundant organs. No significant evolutionary defenses. In the eyes of most of you, we are nothing more than walking bags of water." She paused, allowing her words to sink in, and silence took over the arena. Even Zix felt the heavy weight of a new kind of discomfort. He was used to commanding, provoking, challenging. But what Maya was saying wasn't provocation. It was fact. She continued, unwavering. "Our own planet has been trying to exterminate us since we left the caves." The sound of her words echoed through the arena, as if each syllable was a blow to the perception they all had about humanity. Electric storms, volcanic eruptions, hostile flora, absurd temperatures. Earth was not made for us. She paused, as if recalling something bitter but necessary. Zix observed with the perception of a master, but also with something he didn't recognize: curiosity. He had no idea what it was like to live in such a place, where existence itself was a constant enemy. And yet he knew that a mind like hers was one forged in the fire of adversity. "And yet we survive." Maya did not speak with pride, but with the certainty of someone who had no choice. There was no emotion in what she said. It was just raw truth, undeniable evidence of pure resilience. But Zix knew that this resilience did not come from exceptional physical strength. No, it came from adaptation. Maya did not stand out because she was strong, but because she was unpredictable. A natural survivor in a world where death lurked at every step. Her endurance was not just physical. It was mental. She had learned to thrive in a place that constantly tried to destroy her. In her fragility, Maya was stronger than anyone there could imagine. She took a step forward, her presence dominating the arena with an ease that was almost unsettling. "More than that," she continued, her voice lower now, almost a whisper. "We thrive." She looked directly at Zix, and something in her gaze seemed to challenge the very concept of evolution, as he knew it. She wasn't trying to be arrogant. She was simply stating a truth. Human survival was not a matter of strength, but of emotional, psychological, and most importantly, adaptive resilience. She didn't need powerful muscles or natural abilities like the draconids or the payans. She had a much rarer skill, the ability to overcome the insurmountable. The arena was silent, as if all the cadets were processing the words they had just heard. Maya Chen was one of the few things Zix could not predict. He knew the cadets were afraid, but they were also in awe. Maya was not just a mere human. She was a living example of what Zix feared most. Something that could not be controlled. Something that refused to bend to expectations. Human strength, as he now understood, was not in their muscles or endurance. It was in their mind and in the way they had evolved to face the unimaginable. And upon realizing this, Zix felt a strange chill run down his spine. What Maya was saying was something Zix had never experienced. He had faced thousands of warriors, aliens, and creatures that looked more like nightmares. But humans, they were known for their fragility. Their planet was a death world, where life was constantly on the brink of extinction. To Zix, that made sense. But what Maya said next made his mind work differently. Each of you was raised on worlds where survival is not a real challenge, she said, now looking at the other cadets. I am the exception. We are the exception. She wasn't talking about a physical fight. She was talking about an internal battle, something much deeper, which Zix was just beginning to grasp. But we are not made to be weak, Maya continued, with a smile that felt more like a challenge than an explanation. In fact, we are made to break and rebuild ourselves, and that's what makes us immortal. The silence in the arena was now absolute. It wasn't fear, it was respect. Zix wondered how he could have been so blind. He who knew the value of discipline, strength, and endurance, but he didn't know what true resilience was. He didn't know what it meant to be a Deathworlder. Until now. Zix was used to challenges. He had faced battles that tore entire planets apart, and nothing had ever surprised him like Maya Chen's first reaction to his training. When he announced that the first exercise would begin, a heavy sense of expectation hung over the arena. But before any recruit could move, Maya raised her hand. She stood there, at the end of the line, arms crossed, as if she already knew what was coming. Before we start, she said with unsettling calm, I need to warm up. Zix looked at her for a moment, and another chill ran down his spine. Warm up? He was about to introduce a brutal combat drill, and she wanted to stretch? The discomfort grew. You're joking, Zix murmured, his expression unshaken but clearly confused. Maya, however, didn't seem willing to be challenged. Without another word, she dropped to the ground. With every movement she made, Zix observed with lethal precision, waiting perhaps, for her to stop soon. But she didn't stop. She started with push-ups, simple and direct. 100, 200, 300. Her hands moved with the precision of a well-tuned machine. She showed no sign of exhaustion, only a determination that Zix couldn't have predicted. At one point, one of the peons whispered, visibly impressed, Is this normal? The question lingered in the air, and Zix had the answer. No, it wasn't normal, and that was exactly what disturbed him. But Maya didn't stop. She switched to one-armed push-ups, alternating fluidly without hesitation, as if she were executing a meticulously rehearsed choreography. Zix glanced at the other cadets, who were clearly starting to question their own capabilities. The Nebulans, with their ethereal bodies, began to swirl in patterns of pure anxiety. They were trapped, trying to understand how someone so fragile could perform such feats. Maya, without even seeming to sweat, moved on to burpees. The cadets watched, stunned, as she jumped, rose, fell, and got up again with the speed of a predator in action. Her agility seemed endless, and the others were visibly starting to feel the pressure. It was a psychological and physical challenge that few could endure. The arena was in absolute silence. The sound of her movements echoed as she advanced to the pull-up bars. She jumped from one arm to the other with the ease of a being who understood the art of movement like no one else. She was no longer just exercising. She was demonstrating a skill that transcended the physical. She was controlling the arena, controlling the atmosphere. At one moment, she performed an impressive variation. She climbed up and down while upside down, moving with the dexterity of a predatory creature that doesn't hesitate before any obstacle. Zix looked at the cadets and saw something he rarely did. They were surprised, unsettled, and most importantly, they were learning, absorbing a painful lesson. The Draconids, with their colossal strength, watched with unblinking eyes, trying to figure out if there was any advantage they could gain from this display. But nothing they saw made sense. How could a human, seemingly fragile, execute something not even they could do? "Is this a ritual sacrifice?" a Draconid murmured, with a hint of disbelief in his voice. Zix didn't answer immediately. For the first time, he was uncertain. Maya was challenging everyone's concept of endurance. She wasn't strong like the Draconids. She didn't have the elasticity of the Nebulans. But she was going beyond the limits that he, Zix, and everyone else knew. The instructor AI, silent until then, activated its analysis protocol. It scanned Maya's data and quickly issued a report. This is consistent with normal human parameters. Zix frowned, confused. How could that be normal? Nothing about this training seemed normal. He looked at Maya again, who was now doing pull-ups with a single hand, her expression unshaken. She didn't look tired at all. In fact, she was in a comfort zone that the cadets and even Zix couldn't comprehend. She paused for a second, stretched her arms, and then smiled. "That was just a light warm-up," she said, her eyes gleaming with a kind of competitive mischief that Zix had never imagined seeing in a human. The cadets' reactions were mixed. Some were visibly impressed, others unsettled. But what Zix felt was something deeper. He knew something far greater was at play here. What Maya had just done wasn't just a warm-up. It was a statement. She was declaring, without words, that her limits weren't just different, they were incomprehensible to others. And more importantly, she was telling everyone there that, in terms of endurance and adaptation, she was operating at a level that defied any concept of evolution Zix and his alien warriors understood. Zix, on impulse, interrupted the exercise. He could no longer ignore the impact this was causing. "This seems excessive," he said, his voice hoarse, as if trying to convince himself that he still had control. Maya, in turn, stopped, took a quick look around, and with a calm smile replied, "Excessive? I'm not even getting started." Zix knew there were ways to truly test recruits. The arena was vast, but real combat took place in the combat simulator, a highly advanced device capable of simulating battle scenarios with lethal drones in extreme conditions. When Zix activated Omega-7 mode, the room vibrated with the anticipation of something big. The difficulty was set to the maximum level, where death was a constant possibility, where every move could be fatal. The arena lights dimmed, and the first drones began to emerge from the shadows. These weren't simple robots. They were machines designed to kill, adaptive and deadly. Each one had artificial intelligence systems, with response capabilities rivaling the best fighters in the galaxy. Zix watched in silence, his posture steady, ready to see who would survive. Maya Chen, however, didn't seem affected in the slightest. As the drones began their assault, she didn't move chaotically like many cadets would. She positioned herself with an almost terrifying calm, her muscles relaxed, as if in a state of pure awareness. The first drone approached, its tracking systems buzzing with a series of mechanical clicks. But before it could fire, Maya was already in motion. In the blink of an eye, she used judo to deflect the attack, slamming the drone into the ground with the ease of someone tossing a piece of paper. Zix observed closely. What he saw wasn't just combat technique. It was a perfect execution, a lethal fluidity in every movement. Before the second drone could react, Maya was already on top of it. She didn't hesitate, didn't fear the increasing number of enemies. She wasn't a combat machine like a Paiyan or a Draconid. She didn't have innate resilience or regenerative powers like other species. But she had something others couldn't understand. She had a deep understanding of combat, adaptation, and the improbable. Using a combination of Muay Thai and Krav Maga, she dismantled the drones with surgical precision, her fists and feet like sharp blades slicing through the enemy with every strike. The simulator was clearly struggling, unable to keep up with the speed at which she was destroying the drones. A Paiyan, with its geometric and fragile body, stared at the recording screen, trying to process what was happening. On its display, Maya Chen moved like a shadow. It knew this would become study material for the Combat Academy, but it also knew something more was happening here. This is impossible, it murmured, unable to believe what it was seeing. Zix, however, refused to be impressed. Not yet. He adjusted the difficulty parameters, increasing the number of drones to 200. What would Maya do now? He wanted to see how far she would go. Victory never came without a cost. The endurance of a human being, no matter how formidable, had to be tested. Maya, without changing her expression, simply smiled. "Now we're talking," she said, as if she were just getting warmed up. In a single movement, she leaped to the center of the arena, and what happened next was a display of combat so perfect that it defied any explanation. The drones attacked simultaneously, but Maya destroyed them with unusual precision, her attacks calculated and ruthless. She wasn't just fighting, she was dismantling an idea. The idea that physical strength was everything. The idea that a drone, with its advanced programming, could pose any real threat to a human with an unbreakable spirit. Zix watched in silence, his gaze fixed on the simulator screen. He knew that his own ability to fight wasn't something easily taught. The human body, compared to that of aliens, was far from being ideal for combat. But what Maya demonstrated wasn't about strength. It was about adaptation, about the ability to shape oneself and become stronger with each challenge. She didn't need the brutality of a draconid or the endurance of a pian. What she had was something far more dangerous. She could learn and adjust to any situation. What she was doing in the simulator wasn't just a fight, it was real-time evolution. The arena was heating up. More and more drones fell. Zix, who had faced and overcome impossible challenges, began to feel something he never expected: a growing respect. He knew Maya wasn't just defeating the drones. She was shattering the reality of what he thought was possible for a human being. What seemed like a simple training demonstration had become a battlefield for redefining what resilience, adaptation, and even survival truly meant. And at the center of it all was Maya Chen, showing no signs of fatigue, just a subtle smile, as if she was only beginning to have fun. The simulator, set to push endurance to its limits, had to be recalibrated yet again. Zix knew that the combat record was being broken before his very eyes. He had faced enemies that were believed to be invincible, but Maya, with her swift and controlled movements, was revealing a strength he had never thought possible in a human. As he watched her take down 200 drones effortlessly, Zix realized that, for her, this was merely a step. What would happen if the number increased? What would happen if the battle was against a real enemy? He could hardly wait to find out. The fight showed no signs of slowing down. Maya Chen was now in a combat rhythm that rivaled even the most impressive war machines in the galaxy. She dismantled the drones with a precision and fluidity that seemed impossible for any human. Her movements were fast, accurate, and relentless. Time seemed to stretch as she dominated the arena, taking down enemies that, for any other recruit, would have been a life-or-death challenge. Zix watched, his hands still clasped behind his back. But his mind was elsewhere. He knew Maya was breaking limits, but he needed to know how far she could go. He needed to see the true extent of her endurance. Maya was operating with an efficiency that almost seemed alien. Her heart rate barely increased as she continued to destroy the drones. Zix, however, was beginning to feel the limits of his own body, the pressure of controlled, yet exhausting, adrenaline. On his control screen, he saw what all the cadets were starting to notice. Maya was operating at a level far beyond what any human should be capable of. She was using less energy, eliminating more enemies, and yet she didn't even seem to be breaking a sweat. Zix, on the other hand, knew he himself was nearing his own maximum capacity. Human endurance, rather than a weakness, was starting to look like an unfathomable strength. While Zix felt his own body beginning to protest, Maya only seemed more at ease. Her movements were now more natural, more refined, as if she was adapting to the battlefield. as if combat was flowing through her. She wasn't just defending herself. She was creating a narrative of destruction, each movement something calculated, to be more efficient than the last. She was becoming the ultimate predator, something Zix could not have foreseen. He had seen warriors of other species use brute force to dominate their enemies, but Maya wasn't relying solely on strength. She was using her mind, her adaptability, the way she molded herself to the challenges ahead. The combat simulator, designed to test the most advanced capabilities of any soldier, was being outmatched. The drones that Zix had programmed to attack, in short intervals, were being destroyed with a precision that, to him, seemed to operate on a level beyond the physical. Maya wasn't just breaking limits. She was redefining what it meant to be a fighter. She wasn't using all of her physical strength. She was using her capacity to adapt. To her, each new wave of drones wasn't a challenge. It was an opportunity to refine her technique even further. Zix felt a pang of apprehension. What would happen when the limits he believed to be insurmountable were surpassed? He adjusted the simulation, doubling the number of drones again and adding more aggression to their behavior. The room vibrated as the number of enemies increased, but Maya didn't hesitate. She moved with an unsettling certainty, facing a quantity of enemies that even the most resilient species of the Federation would consider an impossible challenge. Yet she showed no signs of fatigue. The arena was filled with wreckage, fallen drones, their tracking systems shattered and their pieces scattered across the floor. And at the center of it all stood Maya, a human woman, facing adversity with an efficiency that no one there could fully comprehend. Zix was starting to realize something he had never imagined possible. Maya wasn't just breaking limits. She was transforming the very nature of what he believed resilience to be. He had always believed that true power came from species with exceptional biological capabilities, like the draconids and the peons. But what Maya was demonstrating had nothing to do with physical strength. It was something deeper. She was showing him that true human resilience didn't come from a perfect body or evolved abilities. It came from the capacity to adapt, to learn from mistakes, to overcome every challenge. And that was something Zix had never experienced in his long career. As the battle reached its climax, Maya destroyed the last drone with explosive force. Zix watched the simulation display, tracking the time count. 15 minutes and 47 seconds. Maya had set a new combat record. She had done it with only 40% of human capacity, and she knew it. But what impressed Zix the most was that she hadn't even shown signs of exhaustion. Her heart rate, as he saw in the simulation data, had barely increased. And while the other cadets looked on in shock, Zix couldn't hide his own reaction. He knew that to many, she seemed like a phenomenon, but to him, she was becoming a legend that could not be ignored. Zix approached Maya, his cold eyes carrying a new perception. "How did you do that?" he asked, his voice rough with admiration, a rare thing for him. Maya looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. "Because we're born broken, Combat Master. And that's why we heal so fast. That's how we survive." In that moment, Zix understood. Human resilience wasn't just physical. It was something that transcended any species. And at that moment, he knew, if there was anything that could threaten the Galactic Federation, it was the human spirit. After the battle, the arena was silent. The sound of destroyed drones still echoed through the walls, but Maya Chen was calm, as if she'd just taken a walk in the park. Zix observed her unwavering posture, the confidence in her expression defying any attempt to underestimate what she had just accomplished. He stood in a state of ambiguous sensation, a mix of surprise and newfound reverence. He stepped closer, his gaze heavy and fixed, like a mountain. Never before had he felt the weight of doubt in his soul, but after what he'd just witnessed, he couldn't help it. "How is it possible that such a fragile being could do this?" he asked bluntly, hoping to hear some explanation that would finally make sense of what he had seen. Maya looked at him with a calmness that seemed even more intense after the fight. She wasn't panting, not even tired. "Because we're born broken, Combat Master," she said, her voice soft, but carrying a depth Zix had never imagined from a human. She wasn't just explaining the impossible, she was simplifying it. We don't have the strength of other species, nor the physical endurance of pions or draconids. What we have is the ability to rebuild ourselves." She paused, and Zix felt the tension rising in the air. He knew she was about to say something that would change everything. "Our training isn't for pleasure, Combat Master. It's for survival." Zix frowned. He had never considered that before. Humanity, which he had, always seen as fragile and lacking the qualities necessary for survival in combat, was now being presented to him in a new light. The idea that human resilience was not based on brute strength, but on recovery, on adaptation. This challenged everything he knew about combat. Maya continued, her gaze steady and unwavering. "We are forced to be more than just strong. We need to be resilient, adaptable, and capable of surpassing ourselves at every moment. Our planet teaches us this from the moment we are born." The word overcoming seemed to carry a special weight in her voice, and Zix couldn't help but absorb every syllable. Hearing those words, Zix felt something very rare for him, a kind of reverence. He knew that humanity was an example of something he had never truly possessed. She was right. He had encountered many species that were incredibly strong or technologically superior, but none had the ability to rebuild, to adapt, to move forward after a devastating blow. He looked at Maya, and suddenly, she no longer seemed like just a simple human recruit. She was a living metaphor for everything he had believed to be impossible. He was no longer standing before just a soldier. He was facing an example of pure evolution, a living lesson in what it meant to resist the impossible. "But what you did in the arena, that display," Zix began, but he didn't know how to continue. He was struggling to put into words what he was feeling. Maya just smiled, as if she understood the impact her words and actions were having. "I'm not here to impress you," she said. "I'm here to show what's possible when you don't give up, when you accept that failure is part of the journey, not the end of it." She stood up from the combat platform, her steps calm but determined. "I'm not special. I'm just human, Combat Master. But that's what makes us strong. We know that failure is not the end. It's just another opportunity to learn and grow." Zix stepped back, feeling something he had never experienced before. A challenge that couldn't be measured in terms of strength, agility, or physical endurance. He was beginning to understand that in many ways, he had underestimated humanity. It wasn't their muscles or combat skills that made them extraordinary warriors, but their capacity for resilience, their ability to overcome and adapt. He realized that in many ways, humanity was superior to what he had imagined. They didn't need to be the strongest creatures. They just needed to be resilient, something few truly understood. He turned to the other cadets, who were completely silent, absorbing the lessons of that session. Zix knew that this class, more than any physical training, would be one of the most important in the history of the Combat Academy. It wasn't just about teaching physical strength, but about understanding the true nature of endurance. "Maya," Zix began, his voice softer than usual, "you've just taught something that few of us truly understand." He paused, absorbing the weight of his own words. "Human resilience is terrifying." Maya smiled, and Zix knew that her response was already a life lesson for everyone there. She wasn't just a cadet. She was a master of something he was, only beginning to comprehend. And now the question remains, what else is humanity capable of achieving when its true strength is recognized? Maybe you were as impressed as Zix THX, or maybe you've started rethinking everything you knew about endurance and adaptation. But one thing is certain, Maya Chen's adventure is only just beginning, and what comes next might be even more epic. Are you ready to find out? Then don't miss the next video, where we'll explore more about the hidden power humanity possesses. Now, I want to hear from you. What part of the story surprised you the most? Leave your comment, and let's talk about it. And of course, if you enjoyed this galactic journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any space adventures. Let's keep this story going, and who knows, you might be the next to learn a great lesson about human strength.